Hello, I'm Rabbi Elton from the Great Synagogue in Sydney, and this is Ask the Rabbi. Our question today is, which days during the Omer is a person not allowed to get married, and why? The Omer is the period of 49 days that connects Pesach and Shavuot. We begin counting the Omer on the second day of Pesach. We count for 49 days, 7 weeks, and the 50th day is the festival of Shavuot. Pesach commemorates the leaving of Egypt, and Shavuot celebrates the giving of the Torah to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai. And the Torah explicitly commands us to count those 50 days, 7 weeks, connecting one festival and the next. There is nothing inherently mournful about that connecting period. In fact, the Ramban Nachmanides, one of the great medieval commentators and scholars of Halakha, was of the opinion it was a sort of Chol Moed. It's a sort of semi-festive period as one has in the middle of Pesach or the middle of Sukkot. However, in the medieval period, it became a time of mourning, because in Europe, in May and June, the time when the Omer falls, this was the moment at which the Crusaders left Europe and made their way to the land of Israel to fight against the Turks and the Arabs and the Muslims who were at that point controlling parts of the land of Israel. On their way through Europe, they attacked and they ransacked and destroyed many ancient and important Jewish communities. And so it became a time of mourning for Jews of those areas and spread to the rest of the Jewish world. There are in fact 3 opinions about when we observe the mourning practices of the Omer. The first is from the start of the Omer, the second day of Pesach, until Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer. The second opinion is from the start of Iyar, the month of Iyar, which begins a little way into the Omer, all the way until 2 days before Shavuot. And there are some who say we should observe mourning for the entire period. The mourning of the Omer later became associated with the plague that killed many of the students of Rabbi Akiva. There is a Jewish legend that the students of Rabbi Akiva failed to show each other proper honor and respect, and therefore a plague broke out and destroyed all of his students that he had at that time, many hundreds of pairs of disciples. That plague stopped on Lag BaOmer, which is why, according to one custom, we cease our mourning practices on that day. Lag BaOmer is also a day associated with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rashbi, the author of the Zohar, the classic work of Jewish mysticism. His Yortzeit, the date of his death, is also regarded as being on Lag BaOmer, and therefore we celebrate his soul achieving a higher and higher elevation in heaven on that day, and mourning practices are also suspended. And so even those who, for example, observe the whole of the Omer as a time of mourning do not do so on Lag BaOmer itself. The practice of the Great Synagogue has changed over the years. Originally, the synagogue abided by the ancient Polish, German, and then English practice of observing the second half of the Omer as one of mourning, and therefore we allowed marriages to take place all the way until the first day of Iyar, and then only on Lag BaOmer and a couple of days before Shavuot itself, when mourning is lifted because the Yom Tov, the festival, is approaching. However, the opinion of many leading authorities, including Rav Moshe Feinstein, was that since a person is entitled to choose whether they mourn in the first half of the Omer or in the second half of the Omer, it's not for a shul or a rabbi to lay down the law and tell them what to do. And therefore, although there's a period in the middle of the Omer when, according to every single opinion, all 3 opinions, no one is allowed to get married, we do allow somebody to choose to observe the first half of the Omer as mourning, and therefore we would marry them in the second half after Lag BaOmer, or observe the second half and we would marry them before Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And so that increases the number of opportunities that people can have to get married, all of which are acceptable within Jewish law. A question that follows is, if a person is invited to a wedding on, let's say, the day after Pesach, but normally they would observe that as their period of mourning, they have to shift it to the second half. And the answer is no. Rav Moshe Feinstein says, because the people getting married are doing so in an entirely legitimate way, a person who is in fact mourning during that period would not get married themselves at that time, can nevertheless attend that wedding and celebrate at it, and still regard that period as one of their mourning and not mourn in the second period at all. Other restrictions which apply this time of year, which coincide with this restriction on weddings, are taking part in dances and listening to lively dance music and taking haircuts, and also shaving. When men generally had beards, not shaving for a period of 33 days was no great difficulty, but nowadays when a man generally shaves once every day or once every 2 days and looks unkempt if they haven't shaved for a couple of days, the custom in modern Orthodox circles has developed that as soon as a person looks unkempt, they are entitled to shave, and they should shave, even though it's their period of mourning. And many opinions hold that in all cases, a man should shave for Shabbat in order to show honour to Shabbat, even though the weekdays are a time of mourning, because there is no mourning on Shabbat. And in order to look spruce and festive for the Shabbat, it's necessary not only to wash and dress nicely, but also to take a shave. Thanks for joining.